good to see you again, Andini.
Hi, everyone.
That we'll be moderating together today.
Yes, good to see you too, Dirk. So I would like to request all the participants who are not in the queue right now to speak, please mute yourself as we were still waiting for the Minister of Education and Culture to join us momentarily. But Dirk, so good to see you. So we're on the third day. This is the final day. Time flew by so fast, huh?
It did, and for me personally, I had a chance to look around over the last couple of days, and I was just impressed by the diversity of people participating, you know, from professors to students, from businessmen to politicians, and like on all topics, from biodiversity to water to conflict resolution. So yeah, I was really impressed.
It is pretty diverse. It means that a lot of people seems to be interested on how we move forward, I guess, from the current situation that we're in right now, and just willing to explore what we can do for a better future, which is a positive note, I believe, right?
Definitely,
and then,
definitely.
Yeah, we will also have an interactive session, I believe, right, for today with the minister and also for the dialogue.
Definitely. So we invite all participants, and I'm very glad to see so many of you, some new people, but also some people who have participated earlier. We invite all of you to contribute actively to the Q&A button. It's there waiting for you. So please make use of it, and we'll select some good questions. This is your chance to talk directly to high-ranking people like the minister, who will speak in just a couple of minutes. I also would like to welcome a special welcome to all the participants of the trade mission. There is a virtual trade mission. Yeah, you have to be creative in COVID times, of course, to the Asian 5. And they are present with us today, and they are very keen to hear the speech by Minister Makarim. So yeah, ready for that?
I think we will expect a lot of questions to Mas Menteri. We call him Mas Menteri because he's young. We cannot call him Pak or Sir. That's too senior for him. So Mas is like a more younger version, like bro.
Yeah, I was shocked that he's only
Andini.
36 and I'm already 40. I'm feeling so old, you know?
I've been in this session hearing you talking about me this whole time. I felt bad. So I feel like I should interrupt and say, I've been here since you said at the beginning.
No, nobody's telling us that you're already here. So I guess Dirk.
It was the chat. It was the chat.
Oh, it was the chat. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. All right, then. Then Dirk, please introduce our minister.
Yes, excellent. So, Excellency, good to have you here, Minister of Education and Culture of the Republic of Indonesia. And I'm so impressed that you founded this hailing platform, Gojek, in 2010. And it's one of the biggest companies, if not the biggest now in Indonesia. And we're very keen to hear your thoughts on the theme of today, how to achieve effective public-private collaboration to achieve the SDGs. So the digital floor is totally yours, Mr. Makarim.
Hi. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was under the impression we would have a fireside chat.
Yes, we will. We will later on. Do you have like a welcoming remarks that you want to share with us first, and then we can have a fireside chat?
No, let's get to the fireside chat. Let's get to the exciting stuff.
Okay, let's get into it. I believe Dirk has already like a few questions in mind, and I will follow up with the questions.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah, good to go to the straight to the heart of the matter straight away. So you know, in the Netherlands, we really have been trying to stimulate public-private collaboration between universities and between businessmen to work on public goods. And I was wondering if you, with your experience, can share your thoughts with us on that.
Sure. Public-private partnerships, I think, is only as good as the quality of those partnerships. It is extremely easy to claim public-private partnerships by simply signing an MOU, which unfortunately is what has been happening in a lot of countries, not just in Indonesia, when we assumed that there would be public-private partnerships in the field of education. And I'm assuming we're talking and focusing here in education specifically. And one of the things that I think is most important is to have real skin in the game for all parties. And that's something that we're trying to encourage now in our universities, whereby we're not happy just with MOUs being signed between universities and private sector organizations, or multilateral organizations, but we'd like to see real recruiting and deep partnerships. So they could be in the form of recruitment, they could be in the form of matching fund, or actually literally putting skin in the game by contributing funding from private sector to that program. So we'd like to see evidence of real and permanent, more permanent types of partnerships happening. I think that's what ultimately makes it successful. And I think the onus, at least what I like to tell the universities in Indonesia, is that the burden of proving that value really lies in the educational systems, and being able to see how they can add value through these collaborations to industry. Because industry will just operate based on their own objectives. But if the universities do not provide a very compelling value proposition, then I fear that many of these collaborations will be lip service, and they're not deep, and therefore they won't impact the most important stakeholder of this, which are the students themselves. So we've devised a long list of policies that are encouraging this type of deep partnership. One of which is basically we've unbundled higher education in Indonesia to allow the private sector and the social sector and multilaterals to basically cut out a chunk of a semester of an undergraduate's education and have that count fully as credit. Some of those programs will not even need approval of the university, because the ministry will actually pre-approve those programs. So students can apply to those programs, and we hope many organizations, including the ones that are affiliated with the Dutch government, would be able to create these 6-month programs that are dedicated to a whole slew of fields, and have our university students count as credit. So that's one thing that doesn't necessarily require partnership, but as we are waiting for universities to build deeper partnerships with industry, students don't have to wait. They can still jump into these 6-month programs that are being provided by non-university organizations, but count fully as credit. The other things we are encouraging are basically what we call mass marriages, or pernikahan massal, between different degree programs and key industries, where we're really looking for recruitment models. Because if you can prove that there is a recruitment partnership, everything else down upstream from there will be of high quality, because you've got real skin in the game in the industry. So government policy needs to play the referee and also the enabler. We need to hyperdrive this partnership through a set of incentives, both financial incentives as well as policy incentives that make it easier for these marriages to happen between industry and universities and vocational high schools called SMKs.
Mm-hmm. So how has the pandemic changed the course of this partnership?
The pandemic, I think, has not changed the trajectory of government policy, but I think what it has done is that it has significantly impacted all kinds of activities in the schooling environment. I mean, we're just starting to come back to school right now. And so the focus of the ministry has been primarily in how do we actually make sure that some learning is happening instead of no learning at all. In a country like Indonesia, the challenges for online learning are multiples of magnitude more complex than like Europe, for example. So the challenge really has been the effort and energy and mind share of the ministry has been how do we keep learning from happening? And I think that's what has detracted from a lot of the other activities that we were thinking of already rolling out by now. But the trajectory of public-private partnerships in education, I do not think will be affected. The role of technology companies and their role in being partners to the education space, both vocational and non-vocational, that's definitely here to stay. We're looking at a period whereby hybrid models will, I think, be common, but that's up to the school. That will not be explicitly mandated by government policy. We do not believe that remote learning is net a good thing. I don't think anybody in the world is. I think the pandemic has shown the limits of technology in learning. And I think that's a good thing. It's a good thing that we realize that actually you cannot substitute face-to-face learning at all, especially for lower education. So now we know the limits to technology, and we can really start innovating and focusing on where technology really can enhance face-to-face learning. And the technology companies and the technology capabilities of government is going to be very, very powerful. We have built the beginnings of a world-class technology team in the Ministry of Education itself. And we're collaborating with a lot of other partners to ensure we have world-class talent there. So we're building kind of a super app for education to help principals and teachers enhance their face-to-face learning, and to give a fair shot to people, no matter where they are, to access the same kind of mentors, the same kind of flexibility in curriculum as would schools that are more privileged, living in cities and have higher capabilities. So that's how we see kind of that affecting the future. I could go on for days about that, but that's, we only have so.
I see, thank you, Minister. I see that we have the first questions in the Q&A. So let's take the first one from Mr. Aert. He's asking, actually, what is the main interest for the industry in Indonesia to engage with universities? Where do you see that there's really appetite by them to work with universities? Which sectors?
It's very difficult to decide which sectors. We've seen a very broad range of sectors. And the value proposition is also very diverse. Some see potential collaboration with universities primarily from a talent acquisition channel. So they want to make sure that universities are training the kids in something that might be valuable for them to recruit. So that's really where we've seen the biggest interest. The second component is there's a lot of problems that industry don't have the time or the patience or the resource to kind of go deeper from a much more scientific and R&D side. So I think having a very intrinsically motivated team try to crack a problem that usually takes more time and effort and depth in that knowledge. So business problems that require deeper expertise in especially in our top universities, that's the second kind of value proposition that we've seen. So the problem with that is that, there's a lot of these expertise in a variety of other universities that, because of the brand of the university isn't well known, these guys are getting shut out. These guys are getting limited. So what we did was we created two things. We created a policy and we created a technology platform, like a marketplace. We created a policy that says if industry puts in money to a particular program or research in a university, the government of Indonesia will match it. We call this the matching fund policy. So they put one, we'll put one. And in some strategic scenarios, if they put 1 rupiah, we'll put 3 rupiah, up to 3 rupiah. So it's a very simple program of a matching fund, and we can exponentially match it depending on how strategic it is. Now, again, skin in the game formula to ensure that that's a really high quality program, right? That's very important for us. The second part of that is we created a platform called Kedai Reka that will connect the supply and demand. So companies that want to sell problems for academics to jump in and say, hey, we'd love to crack that problem for you. And also vice versa, if universities are working on a particular program and industry said, hey, I'm really interested in what you're developing there, and I'd like to sponsor it. And then the government comes with the matching fund to accelerate that process, right? But without having that, then what's going to happen is only the best universities with the biggest brand names are going to be able to meet the best industry players, when there's a lot of the long tail that could be just as interesting that's happening with smaller universities and with smaller companies and industries. So we've teched it out to ensure that there is some fairness in that matchmaking process.
Wow, what's the name of that platform?
Kedai Reka. It's just a website. It's just a website. Okay. It's not some technological breakthrough, but it is, we just launched it. We're going to iterate it again, but it's a way that, you know, it's like a dating site between industry and universities to match problems and needs and business needs.
Interesting. Okay, so we have questions coming in from audience. You can ask questions here. Please mention your name and your affiliation and what do you want to ask to the minister. Please make it very short and concise and direct. And also, we have one coming in right now. So how to ensure organizations are on the same ground and share the same excitement. And most importantly, able to see that the internship program can yield impact for both students and the organization.
Right. So I think a few things, right? To ensure that organizations are mostly interested, one, they need to have visibility over what universities are doing. And to do that, they need, like what I just described before, more transparent platforms to be able to see, matchmake, and match interests. Right now, there's a huge information gap between industry and what's happening in universities. To companies, universities are a black box, and to universities, industries are a black box. And I'm trying to make those boundaries much more permeable. The ministry is right now, that's our biggest effort, to create a huge amount of nodes so that they intersect in so many ways. The other thing is to ensure that the cost of actually doing these kind of programs, like full semester programs, and the cost in terms of both timeshare and in terms of money is also reduced and mitigated. And part of our plan is to allow organizations and industries to hire full-time dedicated coaches and mentors for these kids coming into these programs, both internships or micro-credential programs. And the important part of where government comes in is to say that, okay, if you want to provide a much more extensive kind of larger scale, let's say you want to build a mini university for these students, then the government will come in and step in and ensure that the costs of full-time instructors and trainers there are being borne by the government. And that's kind of some of the incentives that we're thinking of. And for the students to ensure that, you know, their transportation costs and living costs are affordable for them, because a lot of them come from economic situations that make it very hard to live in the big cities where all the internships are. So that's where the government needs to step in and kind of play around with the incentive structure for both universities, students, and for industry to make sure that the inertia for doing something really amazing that can help their recruitment efforts, and also for the university students to receive that exposure to relevant training and world-class instructors are guaranteed. So it's a combination of things to ensure this. It's not going to be perfect, but you have to start somewhere. But just breaking that into a 6-month program instead of the usual kind of 2-month, 1.5-month summer internship program already is transformational completely. You simply can, it's very difficult to create, 6 months of bringing coffee and pushing papers, right? If you're gonna jump in for 5 to 6 months, it's going to have to be a substantial contribution to the companies. And what we've heard in a lot of industries, pushing that timeline to 4, 5, 6 months was a game changer for them, because then they could start to really involve these students in projects that are directly relevant to their business lines. And so just that timing and that opening up of the time frame with which to do these externships within industry and multilateral organizations was already a game changer for industry becoming attracted.
Thanks, Minister. Wow, that's a big changes that are coming ahead. I see there's a lot of questions in the Q&A, which is great. apologies already. I don't think to all the people who are writing the questions, we cannot answer all of them. But luckily, the team of the minister is also standing by. Even if the minister cannot answer them, we'll try to answer them online. Of course, we have a lot of people from the Netherlands in this seminar. So I would like to focus a bit on that angle as well. Yeah, how do you think that the Dutch and Indonesian businesses and universities can work together? Do you see, yeah, which areas do you think that we can actually complement each other?
So one thing that I've learned in trying to matchmake, the worst thing that can happen is arranged marriages. Okay, arranged marriages will never last. The best marriages are ones that are organic and based on mutual interest and mutual passion and respect, just like a normal marriage, right? The analogy works between universities and industry, between countries, etc. So any type of enforced marriage will not work. So the key here about what, you know, Dutch institutions, research institutions, universities, etc., and industries, key industries, it's really about what they find most interesting and the potential that they find most interesting in Indonesia, and what Indonesian academics and heads of degree programs are most interested in. I can see a few things where I've monitored so far that is of, I think, of high interest to both sides. One is definitely agriculture. Okay, green, you can call it whatever. There are many people that label it. It could be agri-tech. Some people call it agri-tech. You can call it green agriculture. You can call it high yield agriculture, which is deeply related also to the climate challenges that we have. These kinds of yield increasing and environmentally sustainable technologies and strategies, I think, are going to draw immense interest from both sides. Immense interest, not only for the government of Indonesia, but also for universities. We can see some of our top universities like IPB, for example, are almost exclusively focused on agricultural technologies and transformation of that space, because simply the potential in Indonesia is infinite, right? In doing so. And what I love is that agricultural technology, a lot of it has massive positive externalities for climate change initiatives. And that's another thing that Dutch institutions, governments, and companies really care about. And so it's not just adding more revenue to farmers from higher yield, you're also needing far less land that can be used. And you're utilizing techniques that can actually improve biodiversity, carbon sequestration, and simply use that land to rewild the rest of Indonesia. You know, land efficiency is going to be a critical theme. If the world is going to demand that Indonesia, you know, expands its wildlife and its rainforest and keep it, you know, it needs to also have the technology to improve dramatically the yield of its agriculture, right? So that those two come hand in hand. And I feel like this is a huge area of partnership that we can have both academically, industrially, and G2G in terms of government. So I believe that agri-tech is definitely one. Climate change technology is another area of huge interest from both sides, because we're going to be the primary kind of a huge risk and victim of climate change in Indonesia, being a maritime country. So the urgency is very, very high. And so I think that's kind of where I see a lot of potential collaboration happening in those fields. Of course, human development and education is always going to be a consistent theme, but in terms of domain, I think those are key areas of interest that we can continue to deepen.
Mm-hmm. So before I follow up on the next question, I want to follow up on what you said though about the collaboration with, say, with the Netherlands, yeah, right? So we have these partnerships going on, and then also in the universities in Indonesia, they have like the program 2 years in Indonesia and then 2 years, say, in the Netherlands, and a lot of like the Indonesian students participated in that program. But has it been translated into accepting these Indonesian students into the, let's say, the Dutch companies, or like to be like a global Indonesian, meaning they can work in international companies abroad you know. So has it been translated into that in terms of like collaboration with the private sector, or is it merely just the educational part and then after that you go on your own?
So right now, for what we are thinking for the internships and for the externship semesters, is for domestic, for Indonesia, it's mainly industry multilaterals, right? For international or going abroad, primarily the ones that are ready to do this are primarily universities, right? So they would be exchange programs a semester abroad, or maybe research institutes. That's what we've done before, and we're ready to support it through a scholarship. So Kemendikbud, or the Ministry of Education and Culture, together with our LPDP, which is the Endowment Fund for Education, are committed to providing and massively increasing the non-degree, only or micro degree, meaning one semester, just a few courses somewhere at a foreign university. Now, for me, if we could get Dutch companies to host Indonesian students and do what we're expecting to do in Indonesia, that's even more amazing. We would love that to happen. I'm just very pragmatic in terms of the sequencing of this, and universities would be more prepared to do that. And they have probably a higher incentive to do that because they'd like this free exchange of students and of knowledge in this, fascinating scientific laboratory called Indonesia, whereby all of these kind of scientific questions can be answered. But I hear you loud and clear, Andini. If there are Dutch companies that are able to give semester-long kind of credit, we would be more than happy to fund the scholarships for the kids to go there. That would be the best, learning by doing. Like if we could send thousands of students that are maybe doing a major in forestry or agriculture to learn how to go and learn for 6 months in the most advanced hydroponic or vertical farming companies in Holland, for example, that would be just incredible. And we would jump into that and immediately fund it. So that's, I guess, a challenge to the Dutch government if they would be
the opportunity. Yeah, that's the opportunity for the Dutch. Go ahead, Dirk.
Great. Yeah, no, so thank you, Minister. And I see that we have a question from, amongst others, Inaya Ragmani from the Indonesian Young Academy of Sciences. And they say, great ideas, very innovative. But the critical question, I mean, that's great. We need critical questions to advance our thinking. Isn't the Indonesian government too centralized, actually, and too bureaucratized to make sure that all those innovations will actually materialize? That's the question from them.
Oh, great question. Just to be technically sound, the Indonesia government is heavily decentralized, actually, not centralized. Part of my biggest challenge is the fact that elementary schools and middle schools are all under and owned officially by the district level governments. District is one below province. But the high school and the equivalent vocational school at the high school level, SMK, is provincial government. And universities are central government. So can you imagine the complexity? Education, even without that, the complexity of reforming an educational system was already very, very high. Now we have 3 different levels of owners of the education system, and the ministry is still tasked to improve the quality. So just to correct you, the Indonesian government is actually highly decentralized, and that's not always a good thing. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not a good thing because of agency issues and coordination issues. Just getting a policy to be rolled out is a massive communication challenge throughout the steps. So just wanted to correct the questionnaire on there, that it's actually quite decentralized. The bureaucratic side, yes, of course, we all know it, that there are a huge number of administrative and bureaucratic challenges that are as a result of decades of regulations being created that may slow things down to execute. But that's the job of government, right? That's my job to actually try to simplify the regulatory structure. And that's what we've been doing consistently for the past year. Getting accreditation for universities. Within 6 months, we made it a voluntary thing instead of mandatory thing, where every 5 years, everyone had to re-accredit their university instead of like, if you need the accreditation, then you can do it. If you don't want it, we'll use your previous one. And it's just these simple things that just dramatically reduce the amount of administrative overhead that schools and universities have to go through. And we've been doing this consistently throughout the first year. Even throughout the pandemic, we're still cutting red tape and reducing this bureaucratic and administrative burden. And by the way, that comes with risks. That comes with risk. When you give autonomy, when you give freedom, it also comes with a certain level of risk of you're trusting those schools, those principals, and those deans to do a good job. And so no amount of debureaucratization comes without also increasing some level of risk. But at the end of the day, without having some level of trust, you're never going to be able to create high quality, high value educational institutions. There's no such thing as, micromanaging a quality institution. That's the diametric opposite of a quality institution. Quality institutions are by default autonomous and are merdeka, or emancipated in their own way. I find it really funny that a lot of people demand that our students have emancipated minds, merdeka in their thinking, merdeka in their actions, and having the kemerdekaan to be able to find a good living when they come out, when the teachers themselves are not emancipated. And how do you expect the teachers to be emancipated when the principal is not emancipated to take individual autonomous action and to do what they believe is best for their students? So it's a chain effect that becomes a vicious cycle of mistrust. Put more rules to ensure performance. Those rules limit creativity, they limit autonomy, they limit independence, which leads to less free thinking teachers, which leads to less free thinking students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just heard one of your daughters talking, so say
Sorry
hi.
about that.
No worries.
Yeah.
No worries. So as a closing, I would like to ask you that you have a lot of objectives that you want to do in the span of 5 years of the Jokowi's administration, and then a large hiccup came along. And then I know that you need to do re-strategize everything. But
I'm assuming you're referring to the pandemic.
Yes.
Okay.
I was.
Right.
And
we have many hiccups. We have many hiccups. You're talking about the big
huge
one.
one.
The big one. Okay. Yeah.
The big one. Yeah. So what has 2020 taught you the most in terms of achieving that objectives?
It's a great question. Are you asking me personally, or what has the ministry learned?
You as a minister and the ministry in general.
Okay. I think that the first thing we've learned as a ministry is the limits, like I said before, the limits of technology in learning. We know now that remote learning, not so good, not just in Indonesia, everywhere in the world. I'm sure everyone in Holland will say the same thing. It's not up there. It's not up to par to face-to-face learning. So the fact that we will never have a pure online learning model, at least for elementary and middle school, secondary education, is a great discovery. It's great that we got to test this, to know, because there were a lot of people before that were worried about replacing teachers with AI, and there were all these technology hacks talking about the end of teachers, and I'm like, no, that's rubbish. There will be no such thing. There are other jobs that may be completely replaced by AI. Definitely not teaching. Teaching is an interactive, emotional process that requires face-to-face interactivity, that requires gauging emotional levels of students and teachers, and requires trust and care and safety. And that's very hard to replicate in an online system. So that's the first learning. The second learning we had was that never before, having said that, never before have we seen this level of experimentation with technology from teachers, parents, and students, which is fantastic. We have never seen this many people stumbling, learning for the first time how to use these tools because they were forced to do so. And this will deliver dividends in the future, I believe, because now the level of innovation on the education technology side or using these tools will flourish. That part I know, and that's just fantastic. So it reduces a lot of people's fear of using technology, people that weren't comfortable before using it now. The third part, which I think was the big learning for me through this pandemic was, and I as a parent had, personal realization as well, because I had to face this myself as a parent who have 3 very young children who I had to teach on my own at home, is how little parents before the pandemic, how little we knew about education and formal education, how uninvolved we were with our children's education, how easily we assumed that that was the job of the school and we're paying or not paying the school to do that, and I don't really need to worry about it too much. And the pandemic flipped this mindset 180 degrees. And it basically taught a lot of parents that, wait a minute, you need to care because this is important stuff, and that the success of your child's learning depends hugely on how involved you are in your child's education, right? And it's time to learn. So I had to experience this firsthand. I had to relearn how to become an early childhood teacher. I had to learn about, phonetics, teaching numeracy from babies and how to do it. And I had to stumble my way to teach my daughters how to learn in an organic home environment without having teachers, because the Zoom classes, honestly, to my 3-year-old, were just not working. They weren't working. So I think the big learning for me and the ministry was that we are at this precipice and paradigm where the concept of a parent as a teacher is growing, and that the involvement of parents in their teachers, driven by this new connection of technology, because now with technology, there's no reason not to be involved. Parents can keep up to date, they can check, they can give feedback, they can observe, monitor, they can get involved. And there's no excuse anymore not to get involved. And so I think that's going to be a transformative part. And these are all the big opportunities, right? The final learning that we had was, and this is a very good wake-up call for not just Indonesia, but all governments, was the gap between the areas and that had good infrastructure, that had access to internet, versus the areas that didn't, and how the pandemic just shone a spotlight on how big that gap was, and how that gap will be even greater if we don't build a bridge, if we don't provide access to those areas that need them the most. So now we have accelerated a 2 to 3 year program for connectivity all across Indonesia. We have a digitalizing school initiative, which will provide laptops and tools to use so that people in the furthest reach have access to mentors in the cities, have access to the same level of curriculum and teaching material that people in cities have. And that can be a great equalizer once we ensure that they have access. So I think those are the biggest learnings that we had through this very, very difficult situation that we're going through right now.
Well, with that said, happy belated National Teachers Day.
Thank you.
To you and all the ministry. And thank you so much, Mas Menteri, for sharing with us. And goes back to you, Dirk.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for your for your words and sharing the things that you have been learning over the last months in this tough period. I think we learn most in the toughest periods. So hope to see you again in the next edition of Winner, and to a lot of fruitful partnerships between Indonesian and Dutch players moving forward.
Absolutely.
Hope to see you next time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Great. So we're moving on now to our panel, and it's a talk show with 5 speakers on this issue of public-private collaboration. And we have 5 really fine speakers. And let me introduce the first one to you, and then Andini will also introduce the others. So I have the honor to introduce to you Professor Reini Wiradi Kusuma. She's director of the Institute Technology of Bandung in West Java. And she's the first female rector of the ITB. And Professor Lira Hadikusuma is a professor in construction engineering and management from the Faculty of Civil Engineering and Environment. And the good news is that the University of Delft, just 10 kilometers away from where I'm sitting, and the ITB celebrated 100 years of partnerships earlier this year. And it's just for me just one example of the close ties that exist between Indonesia and Dutch universities. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you. So wow, 100 years, but we still have a few more speakers. The next panelist is Peter Duisenberg, the chair, Dutch Association of Research University of VSNU. Peter Duisenberg has been the president of the association since October 2017. And as the former member of parliament, Peter has a voice that is heard in the political debate. I welcome Peter. Hi, okay. I'll greet the next speaker is Madam Anka Mulder, President Saxion University of Applied Sciences. Anka Mulder is a global expert in digital education. Presently, Anka is the chairperson of the executive board of Saxion University of Applied Sciences and represents the Association of Universities of Applied Sciences in this season. Welcome, Madam.
Great. And then we have, as a fourth speaker, panelist Karamita Darusam. She is the brand manager of Unilever in Indonesia, and she graduated from the Hague University of Applied Sciences, which is really just 500 meters from where I'm sitting. And she worked for Philips in the Netherlands in their marketing team in Amsterdam. And when she returned to Indonesia in 2012, she joined Unilever, and you're holding the position of senior brand manager. Great to have you, Karamita.
Dirk, you seem to be located in a very strategic position right now. You're so close to everywhere. That's what I love about the Netherlands. Okay, the last last but not least speaker is Mr. Martin Paul, president of Maastricht University. In addition to Professor Paul's distinguished career as a researcher in the fields of medicine and pharmacology, as well as an educator, Professor Paul has become active in academic management and has worked actively to professionalize academic leadership on the international level. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
Hello. So, okay, Dirk, you have the first question.
Yeah, excellent. Well, great to see you all on the screen. So to all the people who are tuning in, don't hesitate to ask questions like you did to the minister. And I was hoping to hear from you maybe your first reaction to what you've heard the minister say. Were there things that struck you that you totally thought were new to you, or that you disagreed with? Maybe can I give you as first the floor, the professor, the rector?
Professor Wirahadi Kusuma, yeah.
Which one?
They're all professors. You're also professor. Ladies first. How about Professor Wirahadi Kusuma? Can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Reini, please. Yeah, I've paid attention to everything that the minister explained, but I have heard about his ideas several times already, so we understand completely what his goals, and ITB has long conducted what his idea. So the fact that he promote this Campus Merdeka or emancipated education in higher education is very in line with what we have been doing for 100 years. So we are very happy about his program. I would like to add in our ITB is a public university, but we did get our autonomy status, but limited autonomously. You know, not we are not very flexible, but in some ways we are autonomous. So the fact that we have to follow regulation very closely towards the ministry's directive. And now higher education, as explained by Pak Makarim, is very centralized, central government for university. And we actually have to focus on two ministries, the Ministry of Education and Culture and the Ministry of Research and Technology, because ITB, like other universities, we have to perform three the mission. So not just teaching, but research and community services. So these two universities, we hope they could work very closely. I'm sure they are doing that. Synergy between both ministries are very crucial for us in campuses because teaching, research, and innovation, that should be hand in hand very closely. So I'm trying to add on what the minister mentioned about partnership between especially public and private entities. We understand that based on our experiences, the effective partnerships should have very clear purpose. So we need to define the scope of the partnership and should be based on mutual benefit, of course. And lastly, both parties should also have mutual investment. So the last aspect, mutual investment, is usually a bit tricky, especially if we would like to have partnership between Indonesian universities and Netherlands or Holland or Dutch universities, because we are not very fortunate financially and you are very developed. So sometimes it feels one-sided, but yeah, it is tricky, but we do propose. We have so much to offer, but intangible aspect, and you should so universities in developed countries should take that into account. So we should have effective partnership within that criteria. And we have there are not many success stories regarding university and industry partnerships, but recently ITB successfully, and this is a very good news for Indonesia, Pertamina, Pupuk Kujang, and ITB, we established enterprise called Reka Cipta Inovasi ITB, and these three companies, they signed a joint venture to build a factory in Cikampek for national catalyst. Catalyst is a substance that is used to produce biofuel, oil palm based energy for Indonesia. So just a few months ago, and this factory will start to operate by the second semester of 2021.
Okay, very well. Okay, let's hold that for a second, Professor, because we need to have a discussion and we want to make it fluid so everyone
Sorry.
can, and then and also can add on to the conversation. So I would like to ask our Dutch counterpart, Peter and Anka, maybe you can also comment on this. We follow up what the minister said about the opportunities that we can work together between Indonesia and the Netherlands, but not forced marriage, as he said, right? We have to find like the niche where we can work this mixed marriage well, I guess, right? So in your point of view, what can we work on? Peter, Anka, Martin, please go ahead.
Can I start?
Yes, please. Ladies first.
Well, first of all, I would like to compliment you on your minister, because he has so much energy and enthusiasm and vision. So it was really a joy to listen to him. And I think he mentioned a number of things which I found really interesting, but I also realized that perhaps I represent a different type of university. I mean, he mentioned deep partnership, which I fully agree with, a skin in the game, 6-month relations, learning by doing, perhaps deep partnership with regard to recruitment policies. And well, I represent universities of applied sciences, and this is exactly what they're all about. Our education companies have a say in our educational programs. They don't define it, but you know, through workforce committees, they can explain us what is important in the field when our students graduate. But also with regard to research, our research starts where, for example, the universities such as Martin's University finishes. So we work on the basis of which knowledge has been developed lately, and how can we use it for solutions. And I think what the minister also mentioned was that we are in the middle of two major crises. One is COVID and the other one is climate. And quite frankly, I think we need all the knowledge that we have, both from Indonesia and the Netherlands, from the research intensive universities, as well as the universities of applied sciences. And even if you look at this conference, these 3 days, I know there are various joint projects that were presented. For example, the Agricultural University of Van Hal Larenstein did a joint project with Indonesian partners about water management. And well, I think there's so many things that we should join forces.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can continue, I think it's very valid what the minister said, and I also thought, like, Anka, maybe we should adopt him here in the Netherlands. He's a very stimulating person, but we also have very stimulating politicians in our country. You know, I think this idea of really breaking the silos that we encounter, the academic world, the industry world, the political world, we need to bring this together to address these issues. That's what's also called the triple helix, where you really have these 3 factors working together. I was intrigued by the minister said I would send 1,000 people to really do internships in industry. And that's what we do actually at our own ecosystem. We have developed a model called Brightlands, which we call also University Goes to Industry, where we build on industrial side campuses, university campuses, to have students, researchers and teachers from the university work together with research and development experts from industry to do co-creation around topics that are important for regional development. One is indeed health and food and agrarian topics, where we created an Institute of Future Farming. The other one is societal health. A third one is artificial intelligence. And the fourth one is climate change and energy transition. And the advantage is that in this ecosystem of co-creation, it's a partnership of equals. And the nice thing is, because also for our students, employability is key. Where I'm going to work, particularly in this crisis of COVID-19, even more so. So in these areas, they can meet their future employers. And as the minister rightly said, forced marriage is bad, forced adoption is also bad. So it's really a natural process where interested parties meet each other, and that leads then to a stable development. This is certainly an area we could collaborate. And by defining some topics of mutual interest, some named by the minister, I think the whole idea of sustainable development goals, if we define some areas where both countries have strong interests, we really could see if we could also use this model of co-creation jointly. I think that would be, in my view, a good next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, if I may add to that, thanks for this event, of course, and also thank you for the conversation earlier, just before us. I think, yeah. So what I like is the idea of the not forced marriages. So from true interest, that's also something to discuss at home. I have to say, but and so it starts with the topics that also the others mentioned in terms of energy, water, food, etc. And then the question is, the key word, I think, also from the minister's speech to me is the word of collaboration, and how to get that going, how to improve that. And you can do that in of course in learning and teaching with the idea of the semesters. You can do it with research projects. But also one other opportunity I truly see is to get more value out of the alumni networks that we have. There are many. Yeah, you mentioned examples of students that study in the Netherlands and study in Indonesia, and it goes two ways. It's from both sides. And I think they're quite powerful networks that we can leverage. So we have in Indonesia, I think about 25,000 students in our alumni network, and they work in companies. So they have the university angle, but also the corporate angle. And so yeah, they might be partners in getting this collaboration going.
Interesting. Okay.
Thanks, Peter, for sharing. So we talked a lot about forced marriages. I have two daughters at home, and while I'm not forcing them in a certain direction, I at least try to keep them away from the bad boys. So that's okay, right?
That's acceptable. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Well, we talked about making sure that the silos between businesses and universities are kind of taken apart. That's why I'm very glad that we have Karamita with us, who has both been at the university and now at the company. Can we have your perspective on this collaboration? We've heard a lot of positive talks. Do you see possibilities, or do you also see some downsides?
Yes, indeed. So first of all, I would like to extend my greetings to all the panelists here. Actually being among these Dutch names actually reminded me kind of like a deja vu to some 9 years back when I was still in the university, of course. But indeed, I think responding to what the minister was saying about, the collaboration between industry and universities, I think from my part being from the private sector, we talk a lot about also diversifying skill set. One of the good things being in the private sector is basically our ability to work within so many cross functions, right? From R&D, supply chain, marketing, finance, you name it. And it's always been a huge opportunity for us to, learn not only from a distance, but also being able to sometimes experience it from the function in within. So in Unilever, for example, we have what we call Unilever Flex. It's basically an online talent marketplace. It's basically very similar to what Minister was saying about the Kedai Reka, yeah, if I'm not mistaken. It's basically a talent marketplace where different opportunities are presented to you. So beyond your usual skill set. So basically this Flex platform uses AI to match the right people with different project opportunities, for example. And in the context of the current COVID-19 pandemic, for example, where business continuation is basically key, people within Unilever are basically encouraged to assist, on special projects. And often outside of their comfort zone. So you see a lot of many people from, for example, marketing, finance, signing up probably for a job or like for an assignment in data analytics, for example, helping the team, respond to the changes that are happening as the virus actually spread. And within the context of our Future Leader program, which is basically an equivalent of a management trainee, we have also set a kind of exchange program for these young leaders to explore opportunities outside the company. So it's a bit of a similar kind of framework where they secure a spot often in fintech or startups to really learn from the outside industry and gain a different kind of perspective. So I think, yeah, back to the context of education, conventional, beyond the conventional study exchange program, this kind of curriculum, I think, gives students the opportunity to be exposed to, you know, the external world and to really see directly how companies are basically responding to real world problems. I think he was mentioning about sending students more for internship in Holland and vice versa. I think it's a really, really good initiative.
Yes, absolutely. So maybe Professor Wirahadikusuma, and then also it's open for the floor, this question. We also heard about how to extend the partnership, not only in education, but also opportunities in both countries, both in the Netherlands and also in Indonesia. But we also realized that the level of education, as mentioned by Professor Wirahadikusuma, is different. Right, and we discussed it on day one, even, like, right, Dirk, with Bambang Brojonegoro, one of our ministers, that our university level is still quite low compared to other countries in Asia Pacific, and that's just a fact. So how can we, I guess, do the partnership even better in terms of like employment, giving opportunities for say Indonesians in the Netherlands or anywhere? You know, we're talking about Indonesia and Netherlands, so I guess Indonesia and the Netherlands and the other way around as well. So in your point of view, Professor Wirahadikusuma, what can we do about it? What is your expectation? If there's any.
Yeah, thank you. We all are created differently because we should learn, get to know each other and learn from each other. So even though Dutch universities are much more advanced than Indonesian universities, but there are a lot of things that you could learn from us, like what we can learn from you. For example, Maastricht University, I Googled about your university, sir, and you are very good in science and technology innovation management. So we would like to have a collaboration in that area because ITB is assigned by the to Bapenas to develop innovation park or science technology park in the initial stage now. But for example, Unilever can be one of our tenants in our innovation park, and with the support from knowledge or experiences from Maastricht, for example, for developing an effective science and technology park or innovation park. And you probably would question what are the benefits for your side. I would say you will always get to know us. ITB has a very strong network. Nationally, we know everybody. We very in academics, in industry and everything. So you can tap on our networks. If you are part of our network, if you are friends with ITB, and you will get all of our network for your own advantage. So I think it's very beneficial. So there are a lot of potential, Mbak Andini. Makasih.
Yeah, maybe I can respond to
Please.
that. I think
Please.
and my university doesn't have 100 years of collaboration because we're only 44 years old. But from the early days, we collaborated already with several universities in Indonesia. We started with an interesting collaboration with Gajah Mada University in medicine. But so this is very interesting. The strengths of Dutch universities are diversity, as Anka said. You know, we have University of Applied Sciences, more technical ones, and we have all our specialities. One way to approach is, you know, to have and such a collaboration has always to be a win-win for both sides. And you mentioned what would be the benefit for Dutch universities, increase their network, to identify a number of topics. And then you could also have some sort of matching universities, you know, around specific programs. Because in my experience, always when these international collaborations fail, if they have the ambition to do immediately, do everything together. Make it specific and try to look where are matches between specific universities in the Netherlands and Indonesia, and then you can create a very interesting ecosystem. And once we can travel again and this pandemic is behind us, such a matchmaking event could be quite interesting to really identify some specific area where you intensify the relations and try it out.
Peter, you wanted to add something, right? Yeah, Peter, go ahead.
Please, yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, so I think what's important is what we should cherish is the matchmaking function. So also a word that Martin used, and you can see the matchmaking now taking place between two universities here live on the screen. But also the minister mentioned the matchmaker, and he was speaking about a platform. I think a platform will do the job partly, but matchmaking is also very much a personalized activity. And so I do think we need very intensive matchmaking between Indonesian and Dutch institutions, corporates, and that's why I'm very much that's why I very much, let's say, regret the current decision by the Dutch government to close the Netherlands Educational Support Office in Indonesia. And actually, I think it should be expanded. I think we should try to get more matchmaking in the area of education, but also in terms of research collaboration. So have an expanded approach rather than closing it. So in the Netherlands, a lot of people know I'm a big very much opposing this decision by the Dutch government, and I hope it will turn, because I think we need the matchmaking.
Yeah, so even though we're against forced marriages, we like the matchmaking. Anka, yeah.
Well, I fully agree with Martin and Peter. Also, the last point that Peter made about the NATO offices, I also really, I'm really sorry about the decision of the government, because I think they play a really important role with regard to matchmaking. But there's one thing I would also like to make point out about with regard to matchmaking, and that was ministers, when he mentioned this Indonesian platform. I thought of the platform that was established by the Universities of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands, together with companies in the Netherlands, with a focus on the SDGs. It has a title, it's called SDG on Stage, and because stage is a Dutch word for internships. But what it tries to do is to match students interested in doing an internship on one of the SDGs with companies, because there are millions of companies that also want to be active with regard to the SDGs. So it's like a matchmaking platform. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be an opportunity to see how you could develop that internationally as well? So perhaps Indonesia and the Netherlands can join forces with regard to this.
This platform is only for the Dutch students, or international students can join?
Yeah, we've just started it last year, so it's very new, and it's for Dutch students of Universities of Applied Sciences. But I see no reason why it should be exclusive for Dutch students. Why, if it's one step further developed than it is now, I think it would be fantastic to open it up for Indonesian companies and Indonesian students as well.
And the nice thing is also the research universities also have a very strong SDG related program. This could be an area where we could explore this, because I come back to my point, don't try to go about everything in the wider sense immediately, choose some topics. And this topics of SDG is something that's also something that is of mutual interest. And I think it's also a mutual need that we could share.
Yeah.
Yes, Correct.
Great. So let's
Okay.
turn to some of the, Andini, that's okay. Let's turn to some of the questions from the
Yes,
audience.
please. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Because I'm glad that people are typing, and so people see, of course, the benefits of public-private collaboration, especially between universities and companies. But they also, yeah, some person has a critical remark saying maybe the company might have a different priority on the utilization of the product that's being delivered, where the company might have probably will need to make money with it. Maybe the government aim or university aim is to make sure that it reaches the vulnerable communities, but you might not have the purchasing power to buy those products. So how do those opposing interests exist according to you, and how do you deal with those? Does anybody have, can somebody help this person who asked the question?
Of course they exist, but yeah, what you have to do, you have to address it up front. You have to create a framework. And again, there the same is true what we said in the collaboration between the Netherlands and Indonesia. You have to make sure it's a win-win-win for all three. And I think in the Netherlands, we have a lot of expertise in this, how to overcome these obstacles. And that is the rule of transparency, and speak about these things in the beginning. And more, 20 years ago, it was like that companies came and said, I pay you a student and I get your IP. This is no longer the reality. We all have knowledge transfer offices at universities, what we call valorization. So we have our own professionals that then deal with people who deal with patenting and licensing in the companies. And I'm not saying it's not complicated, but it's very transparent and it's done in the open before you start to work together.
Yeah, I think it's of course, I think it starts with, let's say, sort of a core principle that everybody and knowledge gains from collaboration. And that's not only collaboration within university or with other universities and within the public sector, but it's also with the private sector. I think that collaboration makes all of us stronger, and then we get closer to actually coming up with solutions for these global challenges. But then what you need are key core values like independence is very important. Is that you can maintain close to your core values as an institution and as a scientist and as a student. And then some rules, as Martin explained as well. So we developed all kinds of rules around IP and licensing, for example, and that's quite key for collaboration, and good rules around public-private partnerships also in the Dutch laws are very important.
Maybe from the industry side, you want to add anything, Makarim?
Yes. So, for example, I think responding as well to earlier comment about responding, what are the challenges of today's real problems? Yeah. For example, in the slide of pandemic, for example, we've been forced to basically challenge ourselves, streamlining numbers of procedures to speed up, for example, process to meet the needs of communities. And brands like Lifebuoy, for example, they've been forced to ramp up their supply for hand sanitizer, for example, a product or like something that probably no one looked before, right? And which grew tremendously versus before the COVID era. So I think in the era that will follow the pandemic, there will be lots of new needs requiring new innovative solutions. And I think this is where, for example, like a demand space like antibacterial or like hygiene and home, even in personal care, home meal makers, for example, because obviously people will be more often stay at home. This space would basically continue to gain an importance, I think. And when we enter the normal life later on, I think this is where Unilever can work constantly with the best scientists to co-create these innovations, not only within Unilever, but also with governments, in universities and other specialist companies. So I think at the end, we always aim to really deliver future fit innovations. And I think most of this actually come from real consumer needs that we see basically every day around us.
So this question is, oh, Anka, you want to add more? Please go ahead.
No, well, I fully agree with everything that has been said, that you have to arrange these things up front, and you have to be transparent about your, especially research relations between your university and companies. But I think you also have to look at it from you can also look at it from a different angle, and that is that the problem is often that it takes too long for knowledge to come from a university and you know, to the end stage where it's in a product or in a solution. And I think we also have to look at it from that side, that if you look at the big problems that we have now, for example, around climate, what we have to do is make sure that we speed up that process, that you know, what clever researchers come up with regard to fundamental research, that we speed up the process to develop it into products or into policies or into prototypes, etc.
Okay. Okay, Dirk, I think we can ask more questions from the Q&A section. This is actually one of an interesting question that we can work together from Margareta Si Setia Utami from Indonesia, I believe. So is it possible if we, both the Indonesian and the Netherlands, we build a consortium of a topic of research that we can discuss together about the result of the research, and we can have an equal position, for example, safe motherhood or prevention of COVID-19 or any health related research, I guess. So what are the speakers think regarding this matter?
Well, I think it comes back what we earlier seen. We need to identify a number of topics. The minister named two, I think the health, pandemic, prevention, treatment, and how to prevent the fallout as another one. And that could be the next step again, to identify certainly less than 5, maybe 2 or 3 topics where we feel that we have on both sides not only the need and the interest, but also some strengths to collaborate. And then let's go away from this word matchmaking that is indeed related to forced marriage, really bring the researchers together, because what we know from past experience, wherever you are in the whole world, we as administrators or politicians can force researchers to collaborate. But if we identify, what we can do is the areas of national, international interest, and where we have certain strengths, and then let's put on a certain dynamic to develop concrete projects.
Yeah, I think it's possible to have an agenda at the national level and at the institutional level. So at the national level, there are, of course, programs to support an agenda like that. So if we focus on a number of topics, and then we can ask the governments from 2 sides to shape the programs around it. So our Research Council, NWO, and then the RISTEC from the Indonesian side. And I think the program should focus on some of these challenges like climate, water, food, and then say, okay, what do we need in terms of research, but also in terms of talent. So what do we want to develop? And it would be great if it would be an agenda which is not only a university agenda, but if it would be a university company agenda, corporate agenda. That would actually be excellent. Yeah, and then I cannot only, I just want to say many times, we do need the matchmaking on the ground. So I really want to also use this opportunity to say that we want the support offices to stay. We want that functionality, that matchmaking functionality, also in this agenda is crucial.
Yeah, you need the facilitators, you know, and Liz has done that with a great tradition also in Indonesia.
That message is loud and clear, and luckily I have 2 hats, so I will talk to my colleagues once more to keep those officers up and running. We have a great question from Yolanda, and I will turn to that. And I'm afraid that might already be the last question. We'll see. It's a question from Yolanda. She's an intern at NAFIC in The Hague, and she has a question to Peter, Anka, and/or Martin. And so she learned that in Dutch higher education, they're really pushing on this international competencies for students so that they can really compete in the international labor market and that they're ready for that. So her question focuses on the Indonesian participants, actually the listeners. So what can universities in Indonesia or Indonesian companies do to make sure that they are ready for this international labor market? And is there also collaboration with Dutch universities or other players possible in this regard?
Well,
Anka.
Yeah, quite frankly, I think it's not to me to say what Indonesian universities should be doing, and I'm not really sure what Indonesian universities do in this respect. I mean, what is important, I mean, very basic is you know, a fluency in English, but also I think an open attitude towards different cultures and being genuinely interested in different cultures. I hope that we teach our students those competencies at our universities. But I think, to be honest, I think I'm quite sure that Indonesian students learn the same thing. At my university, we have about 50 Indonesian students per year. That was before COVID, and we are very happy with the competencies that our Indonesian students have.
I think what we do is we have added an element in our courses called global citizenship education. This is what we want to achieve for our students, whether they're Dutch students, Indonesian students that study our ones. And because COVID-19 has shown that the challenges, but also the opportunities are in global. And this is also a conversation that we could have on both sides. And we can also certainly learn a lot from the Indonesian view on global issues, and that could be a very interesting dialogue. As I said, we believe we need to educate our students or make them learners that can function in an environment of global challenges and global opportunities.
If I may add, I think what would be very helpful are role models like Karamita. From your introduction, I understood that you studied in the Netherlands and then you started to work for Unilever, and you're now in Indonesia working for Unilever, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So my guess is that you are clearly also a role model for other students, and so I think there's truly a lot of value in the alumni, in those that have been abroad and have that experience to inspire the next generation of students and tell them what it's like and where they can go and help them out. So there I see a step we could make.
Yeah.
Very well. Yes. Go ahead, Makarim, silakan.
Yeah. So if I may add probably a little bit. So indeed, I was actually, so I participated in this Hagus Hogeschool program, right? So not the real university, but like applied science kind of program. So I think the good thing about it is that from early on, we were basically expected to join in kind of like projects or like internship programs. So at that time I did my internship at Philips. So it was basically my first time doing like a real corporate job. And I think it was also very much enriching, for somebody that was, coming like with a complete different background, being able to be in that kind of like labor market in a complete different culture. I think it's very much enriching. And I think if, in the future we can promote that kind of thing more often to Indonesian students, I think that will definitely prepare them to be ready for the labor market, I think.
Interesting. And with that, we conclude the dialogue session. Thank you very much to all the speakers to participate. So the keynote of the moral of this discussion is matchmaking is probably one of the best ways to do it, not forced marriage, but maybe mixed marriage. That can work as well, right? As long as a mutual respect among each other, we can actually create something valuable in the future. Thank you very much to all the speakers who have joined us this afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. And I see that a lot of people asked questions, and we did deal with quite a bit of them. Not all of them, but please keep on checking in your Q&A, because the people behind the scenes will continue to type answers to you. So don't log out, and you will see the responses coming soon to you. So Yeah, we're now reached the phase actually that it's time for us to look a bit back. And we, over the last 3 days, we had very cool sessions. And we had a drawer, an artist, who kind of tried to make an impression of what was said and what was shared.
Yes. Yeah.
And I would like to show that to you on the screen. She made summaries and of the various days. And well, yesterday I tried to participate in as many of the sessions as possible. And let me just take one or two examples that I really found striking myself, and it related to the issue on the biodiversity. You also see it on the drawing. There you see that it's so logical that there's a match actually between the Netherlands and Indonesia, because Indonesia has a lot of biodiversity, but the Netherlands unfortunately doesn't have it. But the Dutch, they have this really cool system of DNA barcoding, which is really innovative and which can really help you to map your biodiversity and to prioritize what to protect. So for me, that was already
cool.
one. Yeah, really a cool example. And the second one that I found interesting was a session on cultural heritage. You know, you see that cities are expanding both in the Netherlands and in Indonesia. And how do you protect this cultural heritage and to make it, to put it to use and to value actually? And since we have this shared history, I do still think that it would be really nonsensical not to make use of that shared history actually. So for me, a lot of interesting potentials to collaborate.
Yes, and the sketches were made by the one and only Miss Kirana Ratnamukti. She is a graphic reporter and a professional sketcher. So that was the day 1 and 2, and then the summary for the day 3, or the last day, is we have to strengthen the public health. We see the COVID-19 crisis provides challenges but also opportunity, such as gaining attendance and support to develop health care sector. And then also online working is a challenge, but also we prove that we can connect. Dirk, you're in the Netherlands and I'm here, and then we can do co-moderating successfully for 2 days. So this is good. And then also share positive examples and best practices between countries are important, and we should continue that. And the interesting quote on this talk show is COVID-19 is a pandemic of experts also. Everyone has an opinion. Perhaps we should focus more on listening instead of talking. That works in any other department, I would say. And then collaboration to address climate change and promote. The pandemic also provides double crisis for the climate change mitigation. Policymakers who are aware of using sciences in this issue integrate this to use into programmatic sustainable development in the local province of West Papua. Oh, I guess this is all the wrap up from day 1 and 2. But it is important of making science digestible and using it for more practical in the private sector, especially using land for food sustainability. And also opportunities to continue in the collaboration in green education, and also more effective research collaboration and strategic partnership in science and innovation policy. So I guess I can sum this up to, like, we need to build strategic collaboration for a long term, a more sustainable collaboration, in this case between Indonesia and the Netherlands. And also for building up a research collaboration, we need common goals such as the SDGs, trust and respect, and also willingness to exchange and share. So that's very fundamental, I guess, what we need to do. And also social contact between science and society become more important in the era of the pandemic. Of course, we salute all the scientists and all the innovation that we can have, in such a short period of time, ever since we hit by COVID-19. Strategic partnership in science and innovation policy emerges as smart solutions for sustainable future. Both countries are keen to reinforce their future-oriented cooperation to solve the outbreak, primarily through science. And the comprehensive and access to data become one of the important points to a strategic partnership and how to find a solution in this pandemic. So that's the summary for all.
Great. So as you said, Andini, in partnership, in marriage, you need to listen, right? So let's see. I think we should also listen to our participants today, to all the people who were there with us from day 1 and day 2 and day 3. So I think we have a mentee meeting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do. And I think it's working now, Dirk.
Great. So I invite everybody to go to menti.com and type in the code. There's just going to be 2 questions for you to provide us with some feedback on what you really learned, but also what we can do better next time. Because this is the first time, and it's like the first date we had. So before we go on our next date, we need to have some feedback, I think. Type in the code 1125989, and you can start in things that you really liked. And I see that the first answer is already showing up on the screen.
On networking, I like that. It's very important because we cannot meet in person, right? It's difficult to travel, so it's a great way to network, I guess. A talk from Mas Menteri, from Nadiem, is one of the activities they enjoy the most. How come they don't say anything about the moderators? I am offended.
Even the people who are just our colleagues could at least have filled that in, right? Yeah.
Exactly. What is wrong with this? My goodness. But you're right, Dirk. So so these are a very eventful meeting, I would say. Too bad that we have to wait for the next date for next year. That's like too long. Maybe we can do it in person in 2021. That would be better, no? Yeah.
I hope so. But I'm glad to see that this networking remains very central, that we succeeded. Apparently, they succeeded in creating, even online, such a platform that people did feel that they could network, actually. So that's great. So since I don't see any compliments for the moderators, let's move to the next question.
The next question will be, what are the suggestions for next year's winner? What are your suggestions? Let's see. Maybe they will write the moderator now. So say moderators, yes, yes, we did it. We finally made it, Dirk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were a bit of leading questions maybe, but hey, it's there.
See, matchmaking. See, people love to meet people.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I see people suggesting maybe an offline event or a hybrid event. That's what we could also do. Part offline, part online. Yeah.
Yes. Invite Nadiem again. Yes. See, say moderators, I love this audience. You guys are my favorite. Seriously.
Okay, but the people say even more that we should invite more people. That's great, but we also count on you actually to spread the word. We'll do our best to invite as many people as possible. And I thought that we did have a lot of people, about 2,000 people who signed up, but we need to make sure that we have indeed spread from all parts of the 2 countries. So we'll focus on that. Thank you for that suggestion.
Absolutely, yes. So we still have more speakers coming, Dirk.
Yeah, definitely, indeed. So let's close this poll and let's introduce for the last 10 minutes. We have kept the best for last, to be honest. So we have 2 speakers for you. We have the Deputy Ambassador of Indonesia to the Netherlands. We're very glad to have him with us. His name is Fikri Kassidi, and I would like him to say some final words, but let's also introduce the second speaker.
The second speaker is Ambassador Lambert Grins, Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Indonesia, and both excellencies will share closing remarks on winner and the potential collaboration from the Dutch and the Indonesian in research and education. Excellencies, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, moderators, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, let me thank all members of the organizing committee for making this event possible. I am pleased to note of the number of activities under the Week of Indonesia and Netherlands Education and Research. This is the first of its kind, and I welcome the initiative taken to organize this academic forum. This is considered to be the widest avenue for different stakeholders to exchange ideas, knowledge sharing, and research finding, as well as enriching a network among expertise. Ladies and gentlemen, looking back to our historical bilateral cooperation, we are privileged to have long-standing academic cooperation, which started way back from the 1980s through the Dutch scholarship program and exchange program, such as scientific program Indonesia and Netherlands. Let me seize this distinct opportunity to express our deepest gratitude to the Dutch government in providing support for scholarship programs for Indonesian students. As such, many of scholarship alumni and program beneficiaries occupy strategic position in government, the corporate sector, or civil society. We are also pleased and privileged to have an extensive number of Memorandum of Understanding and Memorandum of Agreement between Indonesian universities and Dutch universities in various themes and fields. These bilateral instruments of cooperation have yielded positive impact. It brought immeasurable opportunity between our two countries. Let me commend all Dutch agency and organization, as well as from Indonesia, and some of you who have taken a role in enriching a bilateral relation between Indonesia and the Netherlands. For this, I thank each and every one of you. Your efforts are truly invaluable and contributory towards the development of our people. Yourself are truly ambassador of goodwill. Ladies and gentlemen, in seizing this opportunity to collaborate through our exchanges, it is true that there are so many possible ways to enrich our bilateral cooperation. For example, in the field of vocational education. Needless to say, both of our two countries share a common belief that improving vocational education will have a direct impact on the quality of human resources and the welfare of the population in both countries. As such, we welcome and remain grateful to Nufik Neso and Dutch government for their able support through the pilot project in SMK Negeri 2 Subang in West Java and SMK Negeri 5 Jember in East Java. We strongly commend and highly praise such collaboration. It is our fervent hope that the outcome will offer solutions to Indonesia to meet the gaps and needs between the school and the market. Under this framework, it is also expected to further expand the scale of promotion and job opportunities. Since this is still a pilot project, we look forward to expand such cooperation in a wider scope and expansion of cooperation with more schools in different Indonesian regions. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Minister Bambang Brojonegoro, the Indonesian Minister for Research and Technology, in his opening speech said that investing in human capital has become more important for Indonesia. In this context, the government of Indonesia is currently formulating a new regulation enabling a new investment in education for foreign university. Since the Netherlands is one of the most popular destinations for Indonesian students and researchers to study abroad, and since inbound mobility of Dutch students to Indonesia is also growing and increasingly promoted by Indonesian university, we fervently invite Dutch university to establish an offshore campus in Indonesia. I am most certain that through this avenue, we can raise our mutual effort to a higher level, achieving a promising opportunity and witness optimal result to that end. Let me conclude by thanking each and every one of you again for your contribution and for sharing us of your time. We stand ready to support an even greater engagement such as what we are having today and hope grow a mutually beneficial relation between Indonesia and the Netherlands. In this line, I invite all participants to once again take part in the Winner 2021 in Jakarta. I look forward in seeing the fruits of our labors taken this year and as we move together toward the next Winner event in Jakarta. I thank you.
Ambassador Grant.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pa Fitri. Thank you very much, Mbak Andini and Dirk Jan, distinguished guests and participants. Great honor for me to be here and say some concluding remarks because, wow, what a spectacular and an impressive 3 days have we seen. If we only look at the last 2 hours with a very energizing Mas Menteri, very energizing Minister Nadiem, and a very, I think, inspiring panel, very lively. I think all of us would have loved to have a little bit more time because there was so much to be said. And I saw the list of Q&A growing and growing. So yeah, this is only the last 2 hours I'm speaking of, but if we look at the last 3 days, I think it is really very impressive. Actually, I'd like to start with or I'd like to take a quote from our the Dutch minister van Engelshoven, who at the opening session said, "Winner brings together science and policy making, and it is an example for future strategic cooperation on education and research." And I take that example and that quote because while we were preparing for Winner, I had the privilege to speak to the two Indonesian ministers and some time ago also with the Dutch minister. And it was exactly this search for strategic cooperation the three of them talked about. How can we improve our strategic cooperation within other institutions, but also amongst ourselves within the Netherlands, within Indonesia? And you see the different dimensions of this discussion. It was interesting that also Minister Nadiem referred to it. How can you be more strategic? He took the dimension of the cooperation between the public sector, research institutions and the private sector. I even talked about maybe we should have kind of dating site where we could meet. Well, maybe Winner was a kind of a dating site for a 3 days full-time dating site. I think Tinder would not do much better than we have done over the last 3 days. And at the same time, at the same time, I think there was a lot said about okay, bringing people together from different perspectives and backgrounds. Yes, very helpful, but how to not make it, not to do it in such a way that it will become a forced marriage. So you need a platform, and I think Minister Bambang Brojonegoro referred to it in his opening remarks when he said that through education and knowledge exchange, we simply get to know each other better. So you need that platform, that possibility to get to know each other better in order to prevent that forced marriage. And getting to know each other better may lead to strategic research programs. I know that our Dutch government is very much keen on trying to establish a strategic integrated research program when it comes to international cooperation. And I think it would be fair to say now after 3 days that yes, Winner has contributed to that goal. Actually, there are 2 more dimensions. What I like is that this is not only about exchanging ideas, but it's also about trying to translate ideas into practice. Some of the topics, the specific elements of the program were very practical and very operational. Indeed, also trying to link research to applied sciences to practice. And yes, also I think like Ms. Anka Mulder rightly said, it's also about trying to refer to the SDGs, both bottom up and top down. Now, I think this is the first edition of Winner. To be honest, I'm pretty proud because we had, if I'm correct, about more than 2,000 participants registered from a very wide and different background. Very interesting, very good gender balance, high quality speakers, both men and women. And of course, these 3 ministers very actively participating, not because it was a kind of, it was a must for them to do, but they wanted to be here. So it showed their political commitment to indeed contribute to further thinking on a strategic research program. The first edition, what's next? I think good to pick up a few issues which were said. I liked Peter Duisenberg's remark about the importance of alumni. We need to do more with alumni we have. There's tens of thousands Indonesian alumni here in Indonesia as an embassy, together with NESO and with those alumni associations. We want to further invest in tapping their potential. Actually, a few activities have already been launched. I do recognize that some remarks were made about reducing funding to NESO. I don't think NESO will completely closed, but it is indeed some point of concern. I hope those who are not far from central political decision making in the Netherlands can also indeed express their concerns. At the same time, having said that, I think there are also very creative plans already being made to continue parts of what is being done at the moment. And then maybe most importantly, next year, June 2021, we will have the next winter edition, a next full winter edition. I hope it can be done physically. If not, we do it the same way as we have been doing it these last 3 days, or maybe in a hybrid version. But one thing is for sure, winter is there to stay. Winter is there to be held in the next few years, because in my opinion, it indeed is a very, very useful platform. Leaves me with the important, but at the same time quite difficult task to thank those who have been making this possible. I know this is has been a huge, very huge effort for many people. I'm just mentioning a few institutions which have been involved, starting with, of course, LIPI, which have been very important, ALMI, also on the Indonesian side, the Royal Dutch Association of Sciences, KNAV, KNAW, NWO, the responsible ministries in the Netherlands and in Indonesia, our huge contribution from the NAFIC NESO office in here in Jakarta, and of course my colleagues at the embassy in Jakarta. A big thanks to all of you. Really well done, guys. I'm really proud of what has been achieved these last few days. Terima kasih banyak. Now, I have one more little announcement that there's one more. We are all ambassadors. It was said before, we are all ambassadors for science and education. But since yesterday, we have one more ambassador, and that is Ambassador Mayervas Pafikri. You know very well, he could not be here at this moment, the new Indonesian ambassador to the Netherlands. That's why we had the deputy head of mission at the Indonesian embassy. But I would like to also announce that now since yesterday, Ambassador Mayervas has presented his credentials to His Excellency the King in the Netherlands, which was a very nice ceremony. And he assured me that he would be very much involved and very much willing, and also in the new winner. So congratulations to one more new ambassador, Mayervas, in The Hague. Having said that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to thank all those who have contributed with questions and answers. I love the word cloud, where you could see so many people have contributed actively. And for me, thanks very much also to the moderators, Andini and Dirk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Does it mean that we're going to come back next year? I just need to know that. Okay, I got your word.
June
That's the
2021, word? The last
Perfect.
full week of June. Put it in your calendar, put it in your
I already locked my calendar before you even say it. Yes, okay, I already locked it for you.
I'll keep your word. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you very much, Deputy Ambassador. And now, as a true Indonesian, we need to take a photograph. So please turn on your camera, because we're going to take a group picture on my count. Everyone here already turn on your camera. I see everyone is here. Okay, on my count, 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1. For the last time, give me your best angle. 3, 2, 1. Very well. Thank you very much to all the speakers, ambassadors. Thank you very much for attending. We see all the waves and then the clap. Thank you so much. And also, e-certificates will be sent to the email address, which with the audience already registered. And presentation will, with permission of the presenters, will be made available on the winner website. I know so many of you have asked for the presentation, and thank you for joining winner 2020. Dirk, any last words for us, everyone here?
No, so as the ambassador said, winner is here to stay, but unfortunately this conference is now ending. Thanks everybody.
Thank you very much. See you next year, everyone,
Thank
at
you.
Winner
Thank you,
2021.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Matur nuwun.